This extract is taken from the book Hampshire and D-Day, edited by Martin Doughty. It is called Operation Neptune, the Naval Assault, the Build-Up. The next phase of Operation Neptune consisted of meticulously planned build-up of troops and supplies, and in this phase, the port of Southampton played the major part. To ensure a smooth flow of supplies to the Allied armies, two organisations had been set up as part of Neptune: the Build-Up Control Organisation, BUCO, and the Turnaround Control Organisation, TURCO. Their overall aim was to make the most economic use of the available shipping. BUCO dealt with the more general coordination of shipping with the needs of the military, while TURCO did the detailed routing of individual ships to ports and berths where cargoes were waiting. Admiral Ramsay's plan had been to ensure that the maximum amount of supplies were landed in the first 3 days. Thereafter, there was to be a 3-day cycle of convoys to produce a smooth flow of men and stores through the beaches. Within this plan, the aim was that the LSTs, the landing ship tanks, and the LCTs, the landing craft tanks, should, so far as possible, use the same berths each time they came into port. Traffic was not all one way. Inevitably, there were casualties to be brought home and German prisoners as well. In Normandy, the beaches were still exposed to a moderate sea, and casualties among the landing craft were high. It was therefore necessary to clear the beaches of obstacles as soon as possible and to provide shelter for the small craft. On D-Day +1, the gooseberries started to arrive, old warships which were to be scuttled to form breakwaters. They at once made a difference, and the landing of men, equipment and stores went on apace. In the first week, on average, there arrived off the beaches each day 25 cargo ships, mostly Liberty or Victory ships, 38 coasters, 9 troop ships, 40 LSTs, 75 LCTs, and 20 LCI large landing craft infantries. On Gold Beach, where the unloading of armour was going very slowly, Captain Dolphin had taken a decision to beach the LSTs instead of using the Rhino ferries. Despite the planners' fears for the craft's safety, this was done with no ill effects, and unloading of the vital tanks proceeded according to schedule. Back in the Solent, the waters were almost as crowded as they had been immediately before D-Day. The Shell Mex and BP terminal at Hamble had had its jetty extended shortly before D-Day, and this became the loading point for the tankers which kept the army supplied with fuel in the weeks before Pluto became operational. One of Hamble's greatest achievements was on the 5th of June, when no fewer than 212 ships of all sizes topped up their bunker supplies in the 24 hours before D-Day. Portsmouth now reverted largely to being an operational naval dockyard and base, but Southampton became the major port in the United Kingdom for supplies for the United States forces in Europe, with ships arriving from the United States as well as ships being loaded and dispatched to France. All these were handled by the 14th Major Port Unit of the U.S. Transportation Corps, working with the Southern Railway port staff. The figures speak for themselves. To show the magnitude of the work, in the 15 weeks following D-Day, the port had a throughput of 1,002,955 tons of cargo, which was about the same as the whole amount handled in 1939. On one day, the 21st of July, 75 ships were loaded for France with 10,603 tons of cargo and some 20,000 men. It is a measure of how cargo handling has changed to observe that Southampton can still handle up to 10,000 tons of cargo per day, but now it goes in one large container ship. Most of this cargo went to the Mulberry harbours, which were being established off Arromanches in the British and Canadian sector, and at St. Laurent in the American. In addition, the little harbour of Port-en-Bessin provided an additional bonus of being able to handle up to 1,000 tons of stores per day, while Courcelles had also been taken and was making a small contribution. The British Mulberry was under the command of Captain Petrie, Royal Navy, who'd won a DSO and bar in the First World War and had retired to farm in South Africa. His flagship was the old cruiser HMS Dispatch, which had been hauled back from the Breaker's Torch in a near derelict state with no armament and no stores. But she sailed on time with an armament not recorded in James' Fighting Ships, that Bible of ship details, borrowed from the army, manned by soldiers, and with an army major as her gunnery officer. The beginning of July marked the effective end of Operation Neptune with the disbandment of the command organisation. The beaches were closed at the end of July. Captain Dolphin recording, "We had a monumental party at our establishment at La Riviera, and off we went home." Admiral Ramsay remained as Allied Naval Commander Expeditionary Forces and moved his headquarters to France from Southwark House on the 7th of September. It had been a most colossal undertaking. Mere figures cannot express its immensity, but changes in the nature of warfare in the last half-century suggest that the world will not see an operation of this scale again, and well for the world that we should not. But Hampshire remains as the springboard from which England's armies have continued to go overseas. The Falklands campaign was almost totally launched from Southampton, Marchwood and Portsmouth, while the more recent Gulf War saw Southampton once again the base from which most of the army's stores and equipment were dispatched.